Plastic mountains in the oceans. What have we done to this place? It's fatal theory put in motion. How do you fix the human race? Down and down we go. Feel it's going down and down we go. Down and down we go. Feel it's going down and down we go. So this is the home of the brave, from sea to dying sea. We hear the madman rave, prophet philosophy. You can make the fortune of a king, make it cheap and sell it high. You build the bird with a broken wing, forces everyone to buy and buy and. Big box store, you find the best deal. Tax is nothing of the true cost. It's heated up, they deny it's real. No gain will cover this law. Down and down we go. Feel it's going down and down we go. Down and down we go. Feel it's going down and down we go. Oil gushes through these pipes, staining black these stars and stripes. Eagles falling from the skies. How long do we realize? Down and down we go. Feel it's going down and down we go. Down and down we go. Feel it's going down and down we go. Thanks everyone. I'm Ben Kogan, climate activist and musician, and I wanted to thank Sierra Club for having me on here.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Let's do a round of applause for Ben with some exclamation marks in the chat. And then once we get that rush of applause, Ben, please, put your Instagram, your SoundCloud, whatever you want to share your music with us tonight. I hope that feels like a warm welcome to bring you to our creative activism training this evening. And a special shout out to Ben, who joined Sierra Club back in 2019, I believe, with our Green New Deal work, was a coach with our coaching program, and now is leading a tons of amazing work on climate and environment with a host of different groups, including Sierra Club and including his own reusable solutions. So just a thank you to Ben for performing with us tonight. And I hope you all appreciate and see that you are a part of a movement that is beautiful, full of music, art, and tons of creativity. We are gonna go to the next slide, and I will quickly introduce myself. My name is Chelsea. I use she, her pronouns. I'll introduce a little bit more about myself in a minute, but I am one of your co-hosts tonight. And Usman, I wonder if you're out there, do a little sound check. If you're my lovely co-host of the evening is here and able to, get off mute and all of the good tech stuff that comes with our Zoom trainings. Usman, you out there?
Can you hear me?
Hell yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, wow, finally. Okay, hello. Hello,
amazing, everybody. Amazing. Tech, we're on it. All right, so let's go to the next slide. All right, so many of you have already been in the chat, but I'm going to give us a little reminder of how we use the chat on these calls. Some of you this might be your fourth call with us this August. Others, this might be your first. We love the chat. It's a great way to hear from each other, to feel the energy in the room as if, this was a live meeting, a live performance. So please, you're welcome to use the chat as you all are. We also do have some norms around the chat. So we ask that you please engage with kindness. So we love the support and all of the great things coming our way so far. And an important norm is that racism, misogyny, xenophobia, and hate will not be tolerated. If you are expressing hate or any of these forms of oppression in the chat, you will be removed. And that's that. Use ++ as we've been doing to indicate that something resonates with you. And then we also ask that you limit sidebar conversations and repetitive comments. We love the conversations, we love the chats, but also if there are a lot of sidebar conversations or repeated comments, it makes it difficult for our lovely chat monitors to keep track of what's happening. So if you want to have that kind of conversation, another plug for our Slack workspace, which we'll be talking about this evening, where you can have all the chatter side combos that you'd like. Go to the next slide. All right, so here we are in our 4th training of our August training series that is a part of our broader organizing push around our Summer of Collective Activism. Tonight, we are talking about creative activism and making your advocacy shine. And next week, we'll be talking about online activism and social media advocacy, which is going to be a really amazing training as well. Go to the next slide. All right, so here's our call team. I've already introduced myself a bit. My name is Chelsea. I'm a national distributed organizer with Sierra Club's Grassroots Power Building Program. And I use she, her pronouns. I'm calling in from Lenape land in Brooklyn, New York today. And I will pass it over. Oh, and I'll also give a shout out before I pass it over to our incredible support team. Ali Samuel, Liz Pilato, and Rachel Mandelbaum are all helping with different aspects of tech and chat support. And so thank you, huge shout out to all of you. And I'll pass it over to my co-hosts to introduce themselves as well.
Thank you. So my name is James Usman Sheikh. I use he, him pronouns. And sorry, I'm a multimedia artist and sustainable specialist, and we're joined by, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Mahir, come on, introduce yourself as well.
Hey y'all, my name's Mahir Saru. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm coming to you all from Piscataway and Anacostia lands of so-called Washington, D.C., and I work on our federal policy team, work most closely with the Beyond Dirty Fuels campaign. Thanks for being here tonight.
Okay, so I should mention that Chelsea and I worked together. I worked at the Sierra Club like about 2 years ago, so that's the connection. But
yeah,
did you want to
awesome.
go to the next slide?
Let's do it.
Okay, so here's the agenda for tonight. We've already gone over introductions in tech, but we want to cover why we're here. We want to give you an idea of why we're doing this. Then I'm going to speak about creativity and context and envisioning solutions. So why creativity actually can help with these activist efforts. And then we're going to begin an exercise that will help us start to envision the solutions, which is really the main strength of creative activism. So then Chelsea is going to cover creative activism for your action party or lobby visit. So actually turning these ideas that we're talking about into practice, into actionable steps to reach out to representatives to accomplish some of our policy goals. And then we're going to wrap up and talk about the next steps after this meeting.
Thank you, Usman.
Yeah. So the Sierra Club, as you know, it's one of the top environmental organizations in the country, but it's an organization that believes in the power of people working together to make change happen. So they do a lot of work with grassroots groups around the country. And we work towards a just, equitable, and sustainable future built on a foundation of racial, economic, and gender equity, where all people benefit from a healthy, thriving planet. And I can speak on my experience was working in labor and economic justice And we were talking about the just transition, so helping people find good, clean jobs that don't threaten the health of their communities. So yeah, it's all, we're all working towards that same goal, and we can use some creative expression to actually help us get there. So I'm gonna pass this over to Mahyar.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, folks. And I'm really excited to join all of you this evening, fresh from a really historic vote that we just had in the House of Representatives this afternoon. And just to give folks, sort of step back for a second and give folks a little bit of context, and then happy to jump in and give folks an update, and then how you all can get involved. We're really right now, Congress has a once in a generation opportunity to pass a bold infrastructure package that can not only tackle the climate crisis, create millions of good paying jobs, and pass bold democracy reforms like For the People Act, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and really save our democracy. If you've read the most recent IPCC report, and I'm sure, as you already know and are already seeing, the firsthand impacts of the climate crisis all around you. I just this past weekend spent a little time back home in Minnesota, where I'm originally from, with my family. At my family cabin. This is a cabin I used to go to when I was pretty much every year since I was a kid. And this year was the first time that I went, and when you overlook right outside of the cabin to where the lake, where the shorelines of the lake are, there's about a 6-foot difference where the water levels were 2 years ago and where they are now. Minnesota is experiencing a really severe drought, and that, among so many other pieces, was just really overwhelming and really upsetting to see a place that I used to go, every year when I was a kid, and see how much it's changed just in the last 2 years because of the climate crisis. And I'm sure all of you have similar stories and experiences to share of why it's so important to make sure that our elected officials are taking action. And now is really the time to fight, to make sure that we can pass this bold infrastructure package to protect our communities, combat the climate crisis, and make sure that we can get those resources and support to support our communities all across the country. So really, we're making it clear that we have to accept nothing less than this bold climate action, a fully functioning democracy, and an economy that not only sustains us, but sustains our planet. So that's where you all come in. And if you want to kick it back to the slides, I can share a little bit. So this summer, I think all of you have been joining a number of trainings that we've been having. And today, we really want to talk about how you all can engage in creative activism. We've had trainings on how to lobby your member of Congress, and we'll have some more coming up on social media activism. But this one is so important, so you can all really learn how to use sort of another side of this, which is separate from lobbying, but creative activism, in making sure that your elected officials are hearing you and showing, an opportunity for you all to shape this infrastructure package and shape the bold democracy reforms that we want to see. And so going back to sort of the historic vote that happened in the House of Representatives today. So just a couple weeks ago, the Senate passed the $3.5 trillion top line budget resolution, which now turned to the House. And as folks had been maybe following the news over the weekend, there were 9 Democrats, moderate Democrats, who were holding up that vote. Many of us were up pretty late last night thinking that vote was going to happen in the House last night. But unfortunately, these 9 moderates were holding the line. They were refusing to vote yes on the rule that would pass the budget resolution, start debate on the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and really standing in the way of the much needed progress that we need to make for our planet and for our future. With the support of all of you and many of folks that you may know, and the grassroots mobilization from folks across the country during this last 24 hours, plus, of course, the leadership of Speaker Pelosi in the House of Representatives, we were able to hold the line on that final vote and flip all 9 moderate Democrats. So the final vote was 220 against 212, which means we passed the budget resolution this afternoon, which now kicks off the process for committees to draft the substance below what is that $3.5 trillion package. So this is where all of you come in. We have an opportunity to ensure that our priorities, Sierra Club's priorities for a bold infrastructure package, are included in that final infrastructure package that we anticipate will pass this fall. And so if you want to move to the next slide, I can share a little bit about what specifically we're asking for in this bold infrastructure package. So we've got a number of priorities in this space coming from all the sort of different priorities and campaigns that Sierra Club works on. So we have supporting 100% clean energy with a clean energy payment program, or formerly known as a CES, a clean energy tax incentives, including access to public transit, electrifying our cars, trucks, buses, ending fossil fuel subsidies, replacing 100% of our lead pipes, retrofitting and electrifying all of our public housing, schools, and hospitals, creating a civilian climate corps, cleaning up abandoned mines and orphaned oil and gas wells, and last but certainly not least, which isn't included on this slide, but is included in the really great link that I believe Ali just sent in the chat from, summer 2021, and how to get involved here, is protecting the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, and then of course protecting and strengthening our democracy by passing the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. So really, these next few weeks, because now that the House did pass that budget resolution, they'll be coming back in the next couple weeks, really early September, to mark up those specific committees and those specific reconciliation instructions in each of the committees of jurisdiction. So these next couple weeks are so crucial for all of you in all the different ways that we can use our opportunity to mobilize to get our priorities past the finish line, past both chambers, and signed by the president's desk. And I guess I'll take it back and back to you, Usman.
And I'm going to say one thing real quick here before we move from this. So what I'm hearing is a couple things. One, I hear a lot of people saying like, there's still so much work to be done, which is exactly why we are here. There is a lot of work to be done. The reason why this is thrilling is because this was an obstacle that we weren't sure if our movement would be able to overcome. And the fact that we were able to get this vote today means that we have a lot more space to fight than we would have had if the vote went a different way. So as organizers, we know there is always another battle ahead, and it is also extremely important to realize when our organizing and our activism has an impact. And so I just heard about the vote right now. That is very exciting. This means really, this is the moment that we need to be doing everything we're talking about today. So I just wanted to underline, emphasize, highlight that. And I know there are some answers coming along in the chat for folks with more policy questions. But tonight's training is creative activism. So please go to our resources around the policy and everything we have. And we are gonna pivot to thinking about how we can tap into our creative power to pass these important priorities. And Usman, I'll pass to you.
Thank you. So I want to set the stage for why this is actually even relevant. Like, why would this be something that we would want to utilize as we try to approach these policy development or policy implementation goals. Well, one big thing is just how, oh, okay, there's a slight difference. One big thing is just that creativity is something that has come naturally to human beings and is something that we do in order to, we live creatively in order to look at things differently, in order to produce solutions, in order to even identify issues. Sometimes we have to be creative about the way that we approach things. So I also want to emphasize that everything about the world that we live in, especially the human world, has been designed. If it's built, it's been designed, and everything that we interact with on a daily basis has been designed. So it's like important to adopt a creative perspective in order to recognize that, to say, you know, oh, these shapes that I'm using every day, I really like them, or these colors that I find as I'm walking around really soothe me. And it's important to be aware of that. I also emphasize that this world is designed because we also have a lot of constructs that exist in our world. So it's important that if we adopt this creative perspective, we can also understand that we can build constructs as well, to express our own meaning, to express our own connections that we've been able to make. And just generally that this, when you invoke creativity and creative expression, you usually create like a conduit that can allow you to connect to another person. Usually expression in some way, shape, or form. It's singing, it's music, it's art. There's some aspect of it that's probably more universal than you just trying to speak. And it doesn't require that someone is maybe in a good mood to be able to have a conversation with you. That the art itself can be something that someone can process at their own time. So we can go on to the next slide. So specifically in the context of social movements, why is it important that we would want to utilize this kind of creative lens? Because especially as we're talking about activism, it allows us to view alternatives, or to visualize alternatives, and to try to like form the strategies to achieve them. So you can be flexible or creative in the way in which you try to develop a strategy. So say the fact that creativity emphasizes being open-minded means that you might be more open to, you know, just different bits of information. You're just attracted to different aspects of life. And one thing that's good about that is that there's like never kind of a bad thing that you can make a connection to that might help you to enrich a project that you're trying to do, or to take it a step further. There's always something that you can do creatively to figure out a new strategy, or a new way of even approaching this thing. Like, oh, well, if we flip it upside down, you realize that this is actually the point that we could access the most easily. So anyway, that's just a general thing. So it's important in social movements, as I've mentioned, I'm kind of repeating myself a little bit, but it's evocative, it's universal, it's self-contained and dynamic. By that I mean that once that creative expression is put out there, it's kind of like, it's empathetic. It shares a little bit of how you feel about that thing, just in terms of like, say, this art, the way that someone depicts a person, even the framing, the composition of an image can tell you something about what they're trying to emphasize. So that's important as we try to maybe spread messages about things that are kind of like nuanced or abstract, like talking about sustainability. Sometimes it's easier to do that through this kind of lens where, you know, you maybe use the language of like of visual media or something. I think it's worth exploring. Also, just because of I've grown up in DC, and I know that we used to have a lot of murals in the city, and I know that that's something personally that actually connected me to different parts of the city, to even infrastructure. There was one mural in the metro, under a bridge, and it was like penguins working through the metro, or going through the metro. And I remember just the fact that you can give a child a connection to a part of the city, and a bridge, you know, that they're like excited to walk under, can help to push forward the kind of mindfulness that says, oh, let's try to like maintain our infrastructure a little bit more. Let's try to be mindful of, yeah, it helps us connect to our community. Yes, exactly. Thank you. And it can help us to be more aware of the environment around us. And that's especially important right now, as we also want to bring things to people's attention that they might not be seeing even in the environment around them. Sometimes it's about us framing and contextualizing something through something like creative expression. So we could go on to the next one. So I'm going to go over 2 quick case studies where we have creative activism in action. So one of them was the Henry Ford Incinerator in Detroit, Michigan, which was shut down in the early 2000s with a coordinated campaign of a couple of like civil society groups or social groups, including an environmental organization called Green Door Initiative, led by Donnell Wilkins. But I actually interviewed her for like a presentation on environmental justice. That's why I have all these facts. I'm rattling all these facts out. But I was really impressed in the interview. I was wondering like what kind of legal maneuvering or jujitsu they had to do to shut this plant down in 8 months when this is usually about like a multi-year process. So I really was trying to figure out how is that done, because you know it's obviously important to look at the successes to figure out how can we model that for other successes. But anyway, she said that it was actually just like essentially a media campaign where they did this thing that you see here, this banner, where you know, it Stop Smoking Henry Ford Incinerator. Sorry, I should mention what the Henry Ford Incinerator is, by the way. It was an incinerator at a hospital that was still against like national practice, was still burning medical waste and hazardous material. And that incinerator, that smoke was descending on communities of disenfranchised people, marginalized communities, Black and poor and people of color, communities of color. So it was really like there's really no reason to even do this. But then to add insult to injury, the hospital was trying to open a clinic inside of one of the schools that was attending to the afflicted children. So essentially they were trying to help, you know, treat the asthma in the school instead of, you know, actually prevent the asthma to begin with. So people were obviously not happy about that. So they launched a coordinated campaign, did this banner, because this hospital, this church is actually like right across the street from the hospital. So that was just the kind of the luck of activism as well, like this kind of creative expression where you're like looking at these different institutions. For instance, they partnered up with a church to be able to do this. And then they just, you know, do a little tongue-in-cheek, Stop Smoking Henry Ford. It was all very tongue-in-cheek. The other thing was a card that they sent out. They had a mailing campaign where they had multiple members of the community mail to the board members of the hospital cards that I think were like Christmas cards that were essentially saying, all I want for Christmas is to breathe clean air. And I think they really like punched him in the gut with that one, you know. Too many punches in the gut. And then they folded a little bit after that. They brought someone new onto the board who then said, okay, we're shutting it down. But that's to say this is where that pressure came in. Yeah, the postcards and the letter writing, because it let them know that people are definitely out here. Like, you know, you can't deny that mountain of cards. Yeah, exactly. Definitely resonates. So yeah, that's that Henry Ford case study. And that's just an example of some of the strategies that can be used to surprisingly effective results. So this other case study is actually something that Chelsea and I worked on while I was working at Sierra Club. So my background is in environmental science, but I've been like drawing and doing different forms of art since I was a kid. So it bleeds into whatever I do. So I had to figure out some way to make that happen while I was at Sierra Club. And so Chelsea mentioned that they were trying to launch this initiative of incorporating creatives into the Sierra Club, I guess the community or the movement, to help depict some of the ideals or the tenets that are being proposed in the Green New Deal. So that's looking at things like, clean economy, clean energy, healthy communities, those issues, combating climate change and climate change mitigation. So we're trying to figure out how can we get artists to help envision these things that, like, many times as we also talk about like a sustainable future, it's hard to envision besides like some kind of like 1950s kind of Jetsons, like, utopia. Um, but we can utilize the what do you call it? That kind of evocative ability of artists to, or not evocative, but that ability to like synthesize and crystallize an abstract concept into an image, and an image that has like meaning. So we really wanted to be able to leverage that group that is also kind of underutilized, sometimes. And it was pretty successful. We ran a social media campaign. This is actually a what do you call it? A graphic submission request that I made. Um, and yeah, we it was honestly it was great. And I wanted to talk about some of the submissions that we got in the context of the action parties that you all can do after this meeting. You can go to the next slide. So here are two examples. Um, the one on the left is a quilt. A quilt obviously of that's depicting one of the women's marches, I believe. And I appreciated the, and I don't know if this is me, going out of my depth, but the idea of quilting as a traditional, like, you know, traditional like home, like, your grandma gives you a quilt or your mom gives you a quilt, that kind of thing. But it's kind of like the subversion of that, where it's like also these women who would be the grandmothers building the quilt being like, I can't believe we still have to protest this shit. That's a nice little touch. But I also like the idea of these alternative materials. I'm a sucker for, texture and things like that. So I like that one. But also just the idea of the way that you frame something can be like a subversion of what you're presenting. And I mean, you I think you understand that. This one on the right is a poster that was created, that I appreciate, and on like a design aspect, just because I feel like there is something to say about also employing design as we try to reach out to more people and educate people about some of the issues that we're trying to talk about. Just because at the end of the day, it is also aesthetically attractive. But if you can figure out ways to use design principles to, say, guide people to the information that might be most relevant to them, or to help create like a flow of information as you go down a page, I think all of that is worth exploring. Nothing is off limits. So yeah, I just also appreciate that one because it's clean. I'm not that kind of designer, but I appreciate it. We can go on to the next one. Oh, okay. So there's a discrepancy between these slides. I included two more. That's okay. It's okay. We don't have to talk about it now.
I think, Liz, if you stop the screen share and then refreshed it and brought it back, we'd be able to see them.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, you'll be able to do that.
Awesome. And yeah, the ones you're going to talk about are the materials, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like these. Wish that I could have touched that one on the left.
People will
It's
see
like
in just a
an
moment.
old battery or something. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, so I wanted to mention these, and I added these after, because we're actually going to talk about the significance of even something like material as we move forward. Like I mentioned, my background is in environmental studies, and I looked at the intersection of like things like architecture and sustainability. And it's important that we understand the value of something like recycled material. as we create interventions, as you try to create a sculpture or something, I mean, I'm sure that that's something that people naturally do because, you know, as artists, sometimes you want to make sure that you can get your resources as easily or as readily as possible. But I think when it's intentional, it also, it's like empowering when you know that it's maybe better for you to use this found material. So for example, this one on the left was it was like a sculptural or a three-dimensional piece that was kind of like layered. It was like a little geological, and on if I recall correctly, she used like material found from construction sites to also produce some of these textures, um, which I appreciated because there's a lot of waste in, you know, building and most manufacturing. So it's always useful to grab some of that and to give it a new life and to create value from that. And that's important when we look at, well, I'm not going to get into all of that. That's the whole other thing. Well, the circular economy, that's part of the infrastructure and the Green New Deal, but we don't have to go into that right now. So I'm going to just slide over to this art by Emily Ching. This is important because the material is, she was using recycled leather. I think she was using leather, but she was also using felt. And felt is a material that can be created from something like textile, discarded textile material. So, you know, depending on where you are and what resources you have available to you, you might have material that you could easily use for a creative intervention. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so with this in mind, I wanted to propose this little activity. So I thought it would be cool if we could take an opportunity to try to envision some of these solutions given these priorities and given the okay, perfect. Okay, so essentially, yeah, we want to achieve clean energy. We want good access to public transit. We want to end fossil fuel subsidies. We don't want lead pipes anymore. We want to retrofit and electrify. We want to clean up the abandoned mines and wells and protect our voting rights. So essentially, with all of those potential goals in mind, I was interested in thinking about how would you potentially envision a a maybe physical, but maybe even abstract solution to these issues where you can show that how like maybe a system would work in your mind. Um, so yeah, I'm going to share some examples with you in a second, but I also want you to think about, yeah, what would it look like to change the infrastructure in your community? And that infrastructure is in quotes because that's based on how you see, like, what do you see as the necessary pillars or the necessary structures to accomplish these goals? And those structures can be something like solid family time, you know, like that can be something that you feel like is a structural or an integral element to accomplishing these goals. So that's up to you. We really want to hear, like, based on what your experience is, what has your perspective been of what is important for infrastructure? So I also was going to mention, like, you know, if I wasn't presenting, I would be doodling throughout this entire presentation. So I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of you all have some doodles out there. So, you know, I wanted to give you maybe like 3 minutes to sketch up a little idea. And while you're sketching up the little idea, we can go into, I can show you my 3 examples that I made earlier today. Okay. So here, yeah, here I'm giving you, there's only like a snippet of this bridge right here. This is kind of, they get a little ridiculous, but you know, whatever, we're getting ridiculous here. So I'm like, okay, there's this philosophy called like, or this practice called cultural resource management. It's like an aspect of sustainable development where you think about what are some of the like the cultural pillars or the like the knowledge systems or the social structures that are important to a community, and how can those inform the development of infrastructure or sustainable or developmental interventions. So for this example, this is maybe say looking at the history of a city, maybe the breakdown, the breakdown of some of the main cultures of that city. I thought that it would be nice to have like this, all of the people, like the founding members of this community, or whatever, are lining and kind of like holding up this bridge, like helping to maintain the connection between maybe these two islands or whatever. This is my own world, so we can write in whatever. But yeah, that's essentially the identity, the idea. And this is kind of like alluding back to like the Colossus of Rhodes or whatever, but I do think that it's cool that we also reaffirm like our cultural, I don't know, like cultural meaning, like that we are always like reestablishing our cultural commitment to each other and to where we are. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with like, you know, I don't know, a rebirth or a reimagining of what that the celebration of American culture means. And that's something to explore. So anyway, the roundabout on the right, I'm going to keep this very quick. And this is one where it's just like, okay, yeah, you got a roundabout and it's like there's a deer and a pregnant woman that are like, hanging out. And yeah, the pregnant, yeah, you can vaguely see the bulge. But the idea for this one was like to make that kind of that cohabitation or that coexistence like a focal point that people like go around and circulate around, and make a part of their commute or their daily life. But in addition to that, I was thinking about how can we do some things like use landmarks or use shape language. How can we use other forms of communication to also help us like identify how we navigate through the world? So for this one, you can see that like the little exit points also have their own individual kind of designs to them. So that's something where you can like say, incorporate artists to help create the navigational infrastructure that's used for your city in addition to signs. So these are both examples that are born out of like our kind of contemporary realities. And this next one is definitely more out there, more out there. I felt like I had to do a weird one for you all. So I hope that you can make this one out. I tried to draw this little diagram on the side here to show what the general idea is. I was really into zoology. And I always loved just the, it's a sponge. It's like it's a sponge, like a sea sponge that has a structure that actually like makes it almost like a pump. Like it has all these holes and it has like hair that are guiding currents of water that kind of like pull and create like a pump that allows it to filter feed. And I always just thought that that idea of like these access points also kind of like helping to create this funnel of air or whatever was interesting. So for this one, I decided to create like a multi-leveled spongiform metropolitan hub that acts as like people can come and catch the metro here. They can also park their cars here. There's also commerce and businesses here. And it's just to act as a nexus point. But you can also see it's got like a glass dome. It's got a little atrium in there. I'm a sucker for an atrium, and I have ivy and stuff growing on the outside as well to help with some of that temperature management. And so this is just an example of the kind of stuff that we could do. Also because artists are inspired by all kinds of things, and I've seen people where they are able to create like a spaceship based on an expo marker or something like that, like the little things that they have around their house. So I just know that once you get in this mindset, you create one shape and you're like, oh, wow, that could actually be an airport or something like that. So yeah, that was I wanted to share those with you all. Oh yeah,
amazing. Right. And I think we may have to start moving to the
okay.
next section, but I noticed some people were already putting their ideas in the chat. And if you took some time to doodle or draw or write in the last 5 minutes, please keep your ideas, what came to mind as Usman shared those creative drawings that he doodled, and any other thoughts that have been coming up for you. Do you want to go to that slide right before to bring it home?
Oh, yeah. Yes, of course. Okay. So this is why we've been talking about this. Okay. So like I mentioned before, it's like, it's nice that we talk about creativity. It's something that, you know, we think, you know, oh, you can be crafty. You know, you can be crafty and that's what you can do with your creativity. But we're really talking about like adopting that creative mindset and just the kind of ideas and solutions that you can come up with once you kind of let that start to flow. And I glazed over this earlier, but it's also like really important because this kind of perspective or this kind of approach also provides like the kind of generative energy that is necessary within movements that sometimes like suffer from things like what do you call it, like burnout and you know, issues of morale, but this kind of like culture of creativity that can be cultivated can also provide you with ways of like thinking around or out of in and out of those kinds of moments where you have to decompress and step back. And it's important because we want to reach out to people and we want to be evocative, we want to be persuasive, we want to have as many tools of persuasion as we possibly can. And I don't think that it's not negative for us to use something that is earnest and sincere to try to do that. And to put in as much effort as you would into like 3 pages, but someone just can view it and be like, wow, it's really talking to me.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay, let's give some exclamation marks, some pluses to Usman for guiding us not only through some case studies of the activism that he has seen and we have worked on in this climate movement, but also for being vulnerable and sharing his own creative pieces with us. And I hope that, I know for some of you, is my video okay? Also, it's freezing for me a little bit. Is it okay for all of you? You can see me? Okay, cool. And so I know for all of you that for maybe some of you are like, wow, I wasn't expecting to draw like a sci-fi utopia of how we adapt to the climate crisis. And that's okay. We're gonna bring it, we wanted to get the creative energy flowing. We wanted people to get out of the box, get out of their comfort zone. And now we're gonna bring it a little bit back to some more simple things and tactics and ways you can apply these creative concepts, this creative energy into your organizing. So let's, you know, like, give it a shake, maybe like put your pen down if you're doodling, and we'll come back to that. So I am going to walk us through how we can bring these creative tactics into our organizing, and I'm going to focus on the tactic of an action party. So some of you all are here because you've already raised your hand and said, I am ready to do this. I would like to host an action party. Others may be thinking about it. You're maybe on the fence, and I will tell you, if you are on the fence, tonight is a great time to make that decision, to get confident and go ahead and host that party. We will get into those steps soon. And others of you might just be here to learn about creative activism and see what we're all about, and that's okay for now as well. So what is an action party? An action party is focused on bringing friends, family, and community members together. It has a really big emphasis on building our collective power. So it's about building up your community of activists, your community of organizing. And also it does have a purpose and a goal as well. So it's not just a party, it also has an ask at it, which is, in this case, what Mahiar was sharing about asking our Congress to put climate and justice at the center of this infrastructure package, so we can get closer to some of these visions we might have been drawing and doodling on our papers this evening. Let's go to the next slide. So to be really specific, where are we? So I hope some of you, if not all of you, have checked out our Action Party Toolkit, which is our document that guides you through all the ways you can host an action party. Wow, big news in the chat, but I'm going to keep going. Thank you, Heidi. So we are here at the art and creative actions moment of the action party. Some of you might be also focusing your party on calling your representatives, writing letters to the editor, doing social media, and that is all amazing too. But tonight we're going to focus specifically on how to bring creative tactics into your action party. And yes, please keep those exclamation marks coming in the chat for the news of some legislation passing. And let's go to the next slide. So what I'm about to do is essentially walk you all through our toolkit. And in the interest of time, I might not read everything on the slides because all of this is in your toolkit, which is in the chat right now. So one tactic that you might be able to bring into your party is window signs. For window signs, these are things that are really great to do, whether it's an in-person party, some of you might be doing some outdoor gatherings, or if it's virtual. These parties these tactics of window signs became really popular during the pandemic because it was a way for folks who maybe were quarantining, sheltering in place to still get their message out to the community. So here on the slide and in our toolkit, we have some tips for the materials you might need, and also just a few other pointers for how to make effective signs. Let's go to the next slide. Here are some examples of some really great window signs. And also, I know some folks maybe in more rural areas, you might feel like nobody's walking around my neighborhood, they're not going to see my signs. And so yard signs is another alternative and a good idea. I see some smiles, maybe some of you are having that thought already. So yard signs is another idea for an area that has a more car-centric culture. And the audience for these would be your community members, your neighbors, and maybe it's something that could spark a conversation with your neighbor in the future. It's a way to start sharing a common narrative within your neighborhood, which is really cool. It can really shape the way people approach this moment. Let's go to the next slide. And yes, we will definitely be sharing the slides. I think a different slide. Next one. There we go. Another one, which is sort of in the same area of window signs, are flyers. The main difference is that you would be making something that could be copied and printed in mass. And so here's an example. A lot of these images are from Julia Foote, a former organizer with the San Francisco chapter. So these were some signs that she took a picture of in the Bay Area last year. And flyers are something that you could strategically decide where to put, where to post, whether it's around your downtown, around your neighborhood. And we actually have a lot of amazing graphics that are made for social media, but could be used for flyers or for inspiration, which I'm going to go to the next slide to show you. So we have some really beautiful graphics from the Green New Deal Network that are in your toolkit. And these could be things that might inspire a graphic or for your flyer, though they were made for your social media. Next slide. Banners, another way to have a big sign, right? And so the way this is different from window signs and flyers is that this is large. This is really about scale. And a pro tip is to use an old bed sheet to make a big banner. And sometimes I don't even get rid of my old bed sheets. I'm like, one day I'm going to be organizing an action soon, and we're going to be like, how do we make this big banner? And we need the sheets, and they really come in handy. In our toolkit, we have shared Sunrise Movement's banner guide, which is incredibly helpful, very detailed for how to make banners. But I'll just give a shout out here that these are also really exciting, like very visually popping tactics that you can plan strategically, whether you want to drop it out your window, like that picture there, or maybe hold near your member of Congress's office, hold at another spot in your community. There are a lot of ways you could take this tactic and shift it for your target and for the people you're organizing with. Let's go to the next slide. So this is obviously on a much bigger scale again. And again, this photo is from Julia Foote of an example of, you know, an extremely visible banner drop. That's what this tactic is called. That is really gets the message across, not only to the people passing by, but is a great hook for press. So I don't necessarily expect all of you to go and implement this tactic. It is a very intensive tactic that requires a lot of organizing and planning, but just maybe for those of you who want to dream big or maybe have the experience, here are examples of ways we've seen really cool tactics like this in the past. And amazing. See, Janine, we already have tips. The weights on the banner is a huge point. Another thing that I love to share is sidewalk chalk. So this is a really great way if you're planning to have an action party that is maybe has children as well or all ages. It's a great way to get everyone involved. There's a lot of different ways you can do chalk art, whether it is making a drawing like the one in the picture, or you could even create a large mural and use measuring tape and outlines and have people color in their parts of the art. And we also can see on the next slide, this is another example of like, I kind of have like the small, like do it with your friends version, and then like the go big version. Here we have an incredible action outside of Black Rock that was specifically calling out the target. And the reason why this one is exciting is because the location is everything. And of course the chalk art is huge. There are a lot of tips in our toolkit for how to plan where. So please don't go and close off an intersection without for your art right now, but this is just an example of when we've seen it on a really big scale. We'll go to the next slide. And another tip we have in our toolkit is for stencils. So if you're going to bring together some friends and you want to create posters that have the same look, creating a stencil is a great idea. And you could use the stencil for posters, for t-shirts, and also even for chalk, which we'll show a picture of in a second. But we have a photo of an example from the Sierra Student Coalition where they made a stencil for Youth Thrive. And that was a really awesome way to have folks do at-home art builds. So for their virtual action party, folks all had the same stencil, and then they were able to create uniform posters and then add your own independent art to it. So stencils are a really flexible tool. And here's an example of them being used with chalk, where these were actually, this was chalk and stencil to put it on the road and sidewalks. I know that I'm going through these very quickly, but just so you know, these are all in the toolkit. And so this is really me just reminding you about the resources you already have and hoping that as you sort of got into that creative mode that Usman led us into, we can apply some of these ideas, images, words to tactics like these. And I wanted to add this one, which was not actually in the toolkit. And I'm thinking we can see if we can add it, because I saw this a lot last year, and I know a lot of folks here are planning virtual action parties. And this is a really cool way to create a really powerful image at the end of your virtual action party, which is have folks have a slogan in mind, or so for example, people not polluters, or what's wet in solidarity, climate protectors. And you can have folks, each attendee take on one letter, and the art party, the action party focuses on them making their one letter. And at the end, you all take photos and you compile it into one big collage like these. So this is also an idea I've seen, and I'm gonna look in, and I wonder if other people have resources. I'd love to put resources on this in the toolkit as well. because I think this could be a really good fit for some folks. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so I'm gonna ask for some chat engagement. So of the tactics that I just shared, which of these is exciting to you? So if you're here thinking about what am I gonna do? I'm someone who likes creative tactics. I'm curious about creative tactics. You can also go into the Action Party Toolkit for a refresher, but what tactics feel exciting and also possible that you think you could implement in your action party? And I'll wait for some to come in through the chat. Awesome, Jim, virtual montage. Thank you, Iris. Stencils, flyers. Yes, I love neighborhood action party. Awesome. All good. Yeah, I love t-shirts too. All right, let's go to the next slide, but please keep these coming. It's great for me to hear what's resonating with folks. So I have a few slogans here also that I'm going to share, but they're also all in the toolkit. So I know, feel free to take a picture, but this is all in the toolkit. And here are some existing slogans and graphics that the Sierra Club is using, but also our partners in the Green New Deal Network and in all of our democracy coalitions are using. So these are some slogans that might help you get started if you're thinking about a banner, flyer, things like that. And awesome, thank you for keeping these ideas coming. Love it. And let's go to the next slide. Okay, so I just saw a lot of you share ideas for what you want to do at your action party. And now I'm going to help us really drill down into what it will mean to make it happen. Let's take all of this creative energy, this passion, this excitement that we've learned about all of these votes on this call tonight, and let's turn it into action. So if you're planning to host an action party, now is the time to make it happen. If you haven't already, you should start thinking about when and where you want to host it, and our toolkit will walk you through all of that. And when you're ready, you can put it on our map. And there are 2 links on the slide right now that can help you submit your event to our event platform, which means that you will have a fancy event that you can share with folks. And if you make it public, other Sierra Club activists, such as the amazing people on this call, will be able to find it and RSVP and join you. You can also put virtual events and in-person events, so you can do both. And let's go to the next slide. So once you have your event planned, and I know some of you on here do already, I know there's been a lot of questions about who to recruit and who to bring to your event. Of course, our map and our Sierra Club community can help you. For example, we have 82 people on the call at this moment. It's likely that someone might be able to attend your event. They might be in your community, but also remember to plug into your networks. So, if it's virtual, that might change your recruitment strategy. You can recruit people from all over the country. If it's in your community, I saw an idea for a neighborhood party already. Think about some of the different groups that you're already a part of. In Usman's case study, the church ended up being a huge ally for this movement. And an exciting thing here is that you might be surprised at who is interested and who signs up, and reaching out to these other groups that might not be traditional activist groups are really cool ways to make new connections and bring new people into this movement. Now, and I also have a link here for how to find your local Sierra Club chapter as well. Next slide. So once you have your party planned, you have a good amount of folks ready to attend. And again, we have a lot of tips, including outreach templates and everything you need. And yes, some tips for how to host virtual parties in the toolkit. You can do your art. So let's go to the next slide. So I wanted to share a few tips for when you make art at the Creative Action Party, because some of, we can all make art on our own, but making art as a group is a special kind of magic. So I wanted to give some tips here, which is to start the party with an overview of the movement moment and what we're fighting for. Something that Usman shared was that it's really important for this envisioning solutions to have a purpose to our creativity. So we are making art, but also with a purpose and with a specific goal in mind, which is for Congress to center climate and justice in the infrastructure package and pass transformative democracy reforms, right? We are doing all of this with a shared purpose and a shared goal. So that way we can be building our people power, tapping into our creative force to do it together. So make sure you let folks know at your party this purpose, this goal. And again, there's language in our toolkit and our website all over to help you feel prepared to give that overview. And then leave ample time to set up, create, and clean up. Some of you might already know this, but an hour action priority to do art might not be enough time. You have to do setup, clean up, and also leave time for folks to get creative and do that brainstorming together. So I just have a few tips here for how to actually take your creative ideas and make them work and really be an exciting, energizing moment for your group. Let's go to the next slide. And so finally, let's do the social media one. So finally, take pictures and post on the social media. I already saw some folks in the chat here, but this takes your creative tactic from being just a fun group activity to a moment of collective action. So make sure to take at least one photo of your art, but one that also includes the people behind the art, because this is what will show your people power. And then we're going to ask that you post these photos online and tag your members of Congress, asking them to go big on infrastructure and democracy. Right? Here's where some of that magic happens, where you've done this beautiful action. It's really creative. It catches everyone's eyes. And then also you're posting it online in a public space where you can show your people power as well as your creativity. I know for some of you, social media might be a barrier, it might be a new thing, or it just might be something you need support with. And we do have a social media guide in our Action Party Toolkit. And then I'll also say, if you're like, listen, I don't have a social media account, send the pictures to us, which we have a link there in the slides that I wonder if someone can put in the chat. Send the links to us so we can amplify and we can show also the amazing work that you all are doing. So no matter what happens, make sure you take pictures and make sure you share them so that way we can show how people are acting all over the country right now for this big moment. And next slide. And these are some last things to consider. Usman, take it away. Oh, Usman, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I had to turn off my AC. Okay, I just wanted to bring this back. We've been talking about a lot of the approaches that you can use, and they're all good. They're all great. The only thing that I want to emphasize or remind us is that, like, the ultimate goal is that we're trying to move towards sustainability. We're trying to talk to these people and make these appeals for a more sustainable future. One of those things that we may not think about all the time is the material that we're using even to make these appeals. So like, for example, if we're painting a tree, painting a banner of a tree, but we're using acrylic, which is like basically plastic, then we're kind of working against ourselves when that paint will break down into, like, say, microplastics in the ocean. You know what I mean? So it's also potentially embracing the aspect of using materials that are more ephemeral, something like natural dyes. Or I even remember at a climate march that they were hosting in DC back in like 2014, I got some posters that were made out of seed paper, which had like wildflower seeds embedded in the actual paper itself. It was kind of had a nice rough texture to it, like if you make homemade paper. And then it was, the posters were dyed using soy ink. So that's the idea of like being fully intentional with even the material that you're using to make your appeal. Speaks volumes on how much effort you're putting into it, you know? And that's also the kind of awareness that we would need to have as we approach these other people, because we can help to kind of share that through these examples. So yeah, and it's just always important. Recycle junk mail, yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, recycle some material, recycle some textures. I had there was one thing that was like origami flowers or something. And
Mm-hmm.
and I guess the example of like that same idea of that woman, or that quilt of like the Women's March, where it's like tongue in cheek, is like, you can even, with the thing that you're using to make this material, you can make a point in that. So there's really like
Mm-hmm.
so many different ways to approach this thing. Um, based
Yeah.
on, yeah, based on where you are. And yeah, that's the thing. I didn't mention that earlier, but this is like that one of the takeaways is essentially that like this creativity is kind of a lens. It's something that I'm sure that you utilize in some aspect to some degree on a daily basis. So it's about like kind of massaging that out a little bit, and using that as like, like your own personal perspective potentially that you could express with this creative medium. And that's enough to bring to the movement, is that place where you're at right now, with how you can express or how you can contribute, that helps to move the ball forward. And I'm just gonna, super brief, that culture of creativity where it's just like, once you're in the space and then you're talking about, oh, I had this idea and I had this idea, and then I went out into the world and then I saw this thing that confirmed it or denied it, and then you have a conversation with another person that may have also been thinking about something. You want to, we just think about the implications of like these ripples. I always like to think about that. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for coming out, everybody.
Well, we're not quite done yet, and but we're getting to our closeout. Another thing I wanted to share here is the audience, and so tonight we've been really focused on the action party, just because that tactic hasn't gotten enough love in our trainings yet. We had a whole training on our lobby visits, we had a whole training on storytelling. But tonight we really wanted to focus on the action party. But of course, you can bring creativity into everything you do. And so I already saw here some ideas for how to bring creative tactics into their lobby visit. And that is absolutely encouraged. That is a brilliant idea. And that's something where things like audience and goals come to mind. And so if your audience is your member of Congress, then maybe you think about what type of creative things you can bring to your lobby action, whether it's an action outside of their office or even to the meeting itself. And so, that is absolutely a part of this. And then what is even an ultimate goal for us is maybe you have an action party where you all make flyers or you all make postcards and you all start to get to know each other and build that community with this purpose. And then you decide as a group, hey, let's take this to the next level. Let's do a lobby visit together with our member of Congress and bring our creative energy to that meeting as well, and vice versa. Maybe you do a lobby visit, it goes okay, and you think, hey, we need another tactic to follow up. A creative action party is a great way to build on that momentum. So I just want to really enforce that we're here tonight to create space to think about creative activism, the tactics that might be available to you, and you should feel empowered, inspired, and encouraged to bring it into all of your organizing. And of course, you have the freedom to tie these resources together in the way that is most powerful for you and your community. Let's go to the next slide. Great. So we were planning to do breakout rooms, and in the interest of time, we're going to take some questions and see how how many there are. And if there are a lot of questions, we may skip the breakout rooms today and instead encourage folks to connect in Slack and through all the different ways we have to connect with each other. So I'm going to pause for questions just to get a sense of our time and the needs of the group. And then we will wrap up. We are 12 minutes to closing. I will go to the Slack slide while we wait for questions. So you can join our Slack at sc.org/Slack. And specifically, if you want to talk about an action party, we have an action parties channel where I'd love for folks to talk about the different art they're thinking about and ask for questions, support each other, all that good stuff. And this is our Slack that we use permanently at Sierra Club. So not only will you be joining the Slack for this moment in the movement, but also for the long run, you'll be able to find out about other projects in the future. Let me take a look. Oh yes, Janine, it's the clean payment program, I believe, but it is in the fact sheet if somebody wants to send that fact sheet to Janine. And I'm seeing some questions about organizing, which makes me think we should go to our organizing slide, but I want to let a few more questions come in. Awesome. In addition to questions, feel free to start putting some ideas you have that you want to bring into your action party. And we'll go to the next slide and then about the organizing. Yeah, there we go. And then we'll hear more from the group. So next step. So I'm hearing people say, what is the deadline for the action party? And what are our next steps? Perfect. I love these questions. So please take this meeting, this call. You are already half of the way there. You are here on this call. You are informed. You are connected. Now is the time to take this energy and run with it. So we have a week of action, starting this Saturday. Action parties have been happening all month. Lobby visits have been happening all month, and they will continue to happen likely through September 15th, as you all saw was the deadline Mahiar posted. So if you're planning an action for a time outside this week of action, that's okay. Still do it. But we'd love to encourage folks, if you are able, if you haven't planned it yet, next week is the week to get it done. We are going to use this moment to really show a massive wave of Sierra Club activism, advocacy, and enthusiasm for the things we're fighting for. And if we're able to act in one window of time, it really helps us show our collective power by organizing in unison. And also it helps us get the attention of our elected officials and also of the press. So the week of action is starting on Saturday. And we also are going to have some office hours for folks if you need help, if you're here and you need some more support. And I think Marissa is going to put a little pitch and link for the office hours in the chat. And this is another place you can come to if you need help thinking through your action party ahead of our week of action. So here we have on the slide our call to action. Again, organize this action party in your community. And we have a link to sign up if you haven't already. And if you are already signed up, I don't know how many times I've pitched the toolkit this evening, but I'll give it one more pitch. Our Action Party Toolkit has all of the links and resources you need. And again, if there's something else that you're needing and you need it, quick, please go to the Slack and ask your question there. If you are planning an event, make sure you post it on our Mobilize. This is our event platform that allows your event to go on the map. If you need help, we can also help you with that. There is a ton of us who have been calling through all the event hosts and physically helping you put your event up on the platform. So if that's a barrier, don't worry, we've got your back there too. Other ways that we're providing support in addition to the office hours, which the first one is tomorrow, as Mo just put in the chat, is local connections. So we've been looking through our sign up list and connecting you with local organizers and chapters who are also a part of this mobilization, and we will continue to do that. You can also see what's already happening by going to our map as well, which all of this is really on our website. It's sort of the hub for all of these resources. And then finally, we have an incredible coaching team, and our coaching team is hard at work. We are actually coaching the max number of people we can coach right now, but I've recruited 4 new coaches to start this week. So when you sign up, we will do our best to pair you with a coach. But one of the reasons why we have the office hours tomorrow and Friday is sort of to help us support you all while we help our coaches do their amazing job, do their amazing coaching work. And if you are interested yourself in being a coach, you can also sign up here. But I know there are a ton of links and a ton of asks this evening. So again, the main focus of tonight is for you to feel prepared in hosting your action party, getting it up on our map, and of course, having a successful time. And thank you, Rachel. All of our links and our contact info will be follow-up in the follow-up email as well. So while I was just talking, I'd love to ask the chat monitors, were there any big questions that we need to say aloud throughout this call that we should get to before we wrap up?
I don't think so, but if we miss something, go ahead and add it in the chat real quick.
Great. So let's go to the Slack side one more time, and then we're gonna do a power chat to close out. But let's go to the Slack side one more time. So again, this is a place where we communicate as activists, as Sierra Club folks. So please join us there. And you'll notice on the slide, if you're someone not into Slack, we also do have an email address that you can email for your questions. And that is mobilize.support@sierraclub.org. And then let's go to the training slide before we do our power chat to close out. Yeah, there we go. All right, so today was our 4th training out of 5. I am like blown away by our team. It is so much work to make all these trainings happen, and they have all been amazing and different and special in their own way. For some of you who are like, the social media part seems really hard about this training, don't you worry. We have a social media training next week that is going to be solely focused on online activism and social media advocacy. And this will be geared towards people at all levels. So please, if this is something you're curious about and want to learn more, definitely make sure to come to next week's training. And it is also during our week of action. So we'll have things for folks to do right then and there to take action with their week of action. If you leave with anything from this call, it is that our trainings, our toolkits, our everything are at the website that Ali just linked, and that we are really in this powerful, incredible moment at Sierra Club where we are seeing unprecedented levels of actions, especially around something as wonky as our budget reconciliation bill. And we've even seen tonight that the power of this action has impacted the way Congress is voting. And so now is the moment to keep it up. Now, in the last 2 minutes, I'm going to pause and ask for everyone on this call to put in the chat one thing that you are going to be taking away and taking action on after this call. Is it something like calling a friend to see if they want to be your co-host for the action party? Are you already hosting an event and you want to bring creative tactics into it? Please put in the chat, everybody on this call, one thing you are either taking away from this call or one thing that you are going to take action on after this call. And I'm going to let those chats roll in for a minute. Amazing. We have let's let those roll in. And I'm also, while we let those roll in, contact a local organizing group, make a video, sidewalk stencils, working with friends to plan a party, 200 postcards. Keep them coming. Using the great resources of Canva to get postcards and flyers. I love that. Yes, explore some ideas, calling senators. Yes, Raina's scheduling a virtual action party. Amanda, I love the TikToks. We have it in our toolkit and it may be covered in next week's training. Awesome, great. Yeah, great idea to check if there are parties happening near you. And then Usman, I want to pass it to you for any closing words before we wrap it up this evening.
Yeah. So I just dropped in the chat. I just gave my handle on Instagram, and I'm going to send a link to where you can find me right now. Yeah, this is like, I love doing this kind of work. I was really excited to start doing it with Chelsea. This is kind of like the most that I've done in terms of like making my art with purpose and with intention to actually accomplish something. Otherwise, I like draw a bunch of random like concept art, kind of like, yeah, pretty random stuff. But I'm moving more into this space, and yeah, I'd love to hopefully share some stuff with you all, trying to move into doing some interactive like education. So we'll see where that goes. But I honestly, I just really appreciate how many people came out here to hear from us, and I'm just glad that I was able to share some of this stuff that's bouncing around in my head all the time.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Usman. Thank you for sharing all of your learnings, your ideas, your creativity with us. Let's go ahead and do some pluses, some exclamation marks in the chat. I wonder if I can change it. I think I made it so folks can unmute themselves if you want to say a verbal goodbye, and we will let you all continue with your evening. So go ahead. I heard someone unmute. Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye,
everyone.
Thank
Have a great night. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. See you
Bye.
all. See you all next week. See you in the
Bye.
Slack. See you everywhere. Bye.
Divine
See you
Feminine,
next week.
Divine Feminine 11, like
All right.
Divine Masculine, Nico.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you all so much.